Got me?
There he is.
Hey,
Hey,
sorry about that.
you're all good. Just I got it started, just hoping we can get some people to jump on, but it doesn't
Yeah,
look like they have.
yeah, I was walking the dog. Walked him at a
All
poor
good.
time,
All
obviously. I
good.
thought I had a little bit more time than I actually did.
All good. Well,
Let me
we
just,
can go ahead and start. It's recording, so I mean,
okay, that sounds
all
good.
good.
I'm just pulling up the to have the stats in front of me. I watched the game. I know what's going on. I just want to make sure I have this.
All right. Paul Van Wagner, Mike McDaniel, of course, just having, pre-show meetings while we're live. It's all good. That's what we do. That's how we roll around here
Little
on the
bit of
voice of
prep.
college football. A little bit of prep. Yeah, got my prep right here. We're good. I watched the game. We're all set. So really, in all honesty, Mike, you look at what the Hokies did today, and it was kind of one of those deals where it felt like, and we talked about this during the pregame show, like they needed to really come out and make a statement. In the end, it was, but it kind of took a while to get there. It was a little bit slow going. Justin Fuente even talked about that during the post-game stuff, where he said, it took us a little while to get going, but kind of once we got going, we were good. What were your thoughts on the Hokies play, especially in the first half?
The first half was pretty poor. If you're looking at it just through the lens of kind of what happened last week, it was disappointing. Now, was it surprising? No, not necessarily. I wouldn't say surprising. Right. I think a lot of us going into this game expected, and I wasn't one of these people. I thought Virginia Tech would win this game 45-14. Obviously, it was a little bit closer than that throughout.
Yeah.
But I think what we've come to realize with a lot of Justin Fuente coach teams at Virginia Tech, it's that teams frequently play up to the caliber of their opponents, whether that's for a quarter, 2 quarters, a full game, when Tech wins big games, or they play down to some of their competition, whether that's, beating Furman a few years back, but having it not really be all that convincing, whether it's losing in a blowout to Duke a couple of weeks after that, whether it's, losing to an Old Dominion, a Liberty last year that, look, Liberty's a good football program and they fielded a very good team. Malik Willis is going to be an NFL quarterback, but that's a team you should beat if you're Virginia Tech, right? And so, there's some disappointment with how Justin Fuente's teams respond to, big wins.
Yeah.
And look, it happened to Frank Beamer too, right? So it's not exclusive to Fuente for sure, but these teams need to play a bit better week over week. They got to be a bit more consistent, right? And that's the bottom line, especially on offense.
I mentioned during the pregame show, here's the stat. Fuente's been, this is his 6th year. In 4 out of the 6 years, 2020 was the lone exception. He has had the team break into the top 25 at some point during the year. Prior to today, in those previous 4 seasons, he was 0-4 in his next game. I'll tell you what, man, as a fan of Virginia Tech football, I'm going to take this as a win, right? Because you have broken that trend. It goes back to the whole Georgia Tech thing in the past, right? What was Justin Fuente's Achilles heel? Playing against Georgia Tech. You finally beat Georgia Tech. These are the baby steps that as a program you have to take. And sometimes fans are like, oh, we want more. We want it all right now. Give it to us in gigantic, just let us put our arms around it. But sometimes you got to take thimbles full of it in order for it to get to a point where you are competing on a regular basis for those ACC championships. And I think this was another one of those thimbles full of good that we got.
I agree. I think, it's a stepping stone in the right direction. Now, fans, mostly tend to be impatient in general, but I understand, it is year 6. So, I know what Babcock said, okay, we're in year 1. It's like our new year 1 is what he said when he decided to retain Fuente because, now the program has all of the assets at their disposal. But the way I look at this, it's like, well, okay, but it's still year 6.
Right.
And look, I don't want to make this sound like it's a huge negative. I look at this game today and it was a tale of 2 halves, right? Virginia Tech came out slow, which was, I was hoping they wouldn't, but it wasn't a huge surprise that they did. And it was 14-7 at halftime. But Paul, it never really felt to me, and Tech was playing zone defense, which I didn't really agree with. I thought, you got guys who can line up man coverage. You don't need to line up 10 yards off the ball against Middle Tennessee State's wide receivers.
Right.
They got some talent on the roster, but they're not like Carolina, for example. And I didn't necessarily agree with that, but I never really felt like Middle Tennessee State was really threatening to win this football game. I know it was 14-7 at halftime, and it was not pretty, but I never felt like this was a game that Virginia Tech was going to lose. And the way Tech played in the second half was more of what I was hoping for in the first half.
Right.
Offense took some more chances down the field. The offensive line certainly was blocking a bit better. Burmeister was making some better throws. Burmeister was catching some slack on some flack on social media. I wasn't sure I necessarily agreed with. I don't think he was done too many favors. I was actually pretty disappointed with how the offensive line played in the game. And I was disappointed the receivers couldn't get open against some of Middle Tennessee's defensive backs. These are guys who were getting open pretty easily a week ago. But I worry about Virginia Tech against better competition, Paul, because I'm not sure that Tech has the playmakers on the outside that can consistently win one-on-one. They're schemed open a lot. They were schemed open last week, and some guys had some big games. You look at Raheem Blackshear out of the backfield last week. He was very good. Blackshear was very good today, but he was good last week being schemed open out of the backfield. Trey Turner had some big catches. Kavion Robinson had a few big catches last week. James Mitchell as well. But can these guys win consistently one-on-one, Paul? That's the question. And if it comes down to it, fans are yelling, "Oh, we want a downfield passing game. We want to see more of that." Well, what if Cornelsen doesn't think his receivers can get open? Have we considered that part? We can yell for a downfield passing game all we want. We can pin on Burmeister because he's the quarterback and that's an easy target. But if the receivers aren't beating guys one-on-one, at some point, that's a part of it. Right? That's a part of it.
Yeah, and here's the crazy thing to me, right? The first year under Fuente, man, they were throwing the ball all over the place. And what were people doing on social media? Just run the damn ball. The fan base, especially with Virginia Tech, is never going to be happy. This is an offense right now that is going to be predicated on the run. They ran the ball. Let me see here. Let me get the number for you. They ran the ball 39 times for 240 yards. That's damn good production. That's 5.7 yards per carry. You run the ball twice, you got a first down. Stop complaining. This is not they understand what they have. Braxton Burmeister is a serviceable quarterback who is going to get you. He's going to make the right decisions, and he's good on his feet. He is not a guy he's not Peyton Manning. He is not a guy that's going to sling the ball all over the place. He's not a gunslinger like a Brett Favre type player. And I know I'm comparing him to NFL players, but it's easier to make that comparison than with other college kids. He is what he is. And I think the coaching staff understands what his strengths are. They understand what his weaknesses are. And they, as you say, Mike, they scheme to that. He only had one play that he really, truly took a shot downfield, and that was the play to Trey Turner over the middle. And Trey was so wide open, I could have hit him with the pass. So, I mean, that was – but you know what? Braxton hit him with that pass, and it was a good play. You watch this team. They're going to dink and dunk you to death, and they're going to run the ball down your throat. And if you can't stop that, you are going to be in for a long day, and that is what Virginia Tech is. If you're on social media complaining about it, stop. It's not going to change. This is what you've got this year. Accept it and be happy with wins.
Yeah, and I'll have a film breakdown later this week on sonsofsaturday.com. I just want to illustrate for the fans out there that the receivers aren't consistently winning one-on-one on the outside by themselves, right? So if you're an offensive coordinator and you're seeing your receivers not get open one-on-one consistently, then what do you do next? Well, you don't say, okay, we're just going to run straight go routes. We're going to have Trey Turner try to shake a guy loose and one-on-one try to beat him. That's what we're going to do all day. No, you scheme them open, right? Yeah. You have crossing routes, you have slants, you have stutter and goes. You got all sorts of different route combinations that you run. Virginia Tech's offense has been doing that to a T under Brad Cornelsen for a number of years. They did it last week very successfully against North Carolina. And some of the reasons why they had success in the passing game in the second half of this football game is because they got back to trying to scheme guys open, not just saying, okay, we're going to beat you with our athletes, right? Now, the bigger question, and it's an uncomfortable question for Virginia Tech fans that, I think has been asked and I think it's fair is, why can't our receivers beat Middle Tennessee State's defensive backs one-on-one? that's a more open-ended, broad question that I understand, right? Like that's a concern. You got to be able to win those battles one-on-one, because when you get the Pittsburghs of the world on the schedule, the Miamis of the world on the schedule, when these defenses, these talented defensive back groups go up against your wide receivers, can you trust them to win those one-on-one battles? Even Notre Dame lost a lot on that side of the football, and they almost lost to Toledo this afternoon. But they have talented defensive backs as well that they've recruited. So can Tech consistently win against those defensive back groups? Even West Virginia, the Tech will be facing next week. West Virginia had one of the best defenses, had the best defense in the Big 12 last year. Can you win consistently one-on-one? And at some point, that question is going to need to be answered, right, in a very critical situation in the football game. It's going to come down to, on that particular day, can Tech's receivers win those battles?
We got a message on here, and listener says, yeah, it's great to see Blumrick get in the game. I thought that was kind of cool. We talked a little bit with Justin Fuente about that. That's not his only package, right? Like, Fu was very adamant that it's not just, they don't have like 3 or 4 wildcat plays that they're going to run for Blumrick. They believe that he can come in and play. But not only Blumrick, but Knox Kadum too. I mean, we saw Braxton go down. We saw the injury. The hit was pretty vicious. He was able to come back in the game, obviously, but Knox Kadum jumps in at a moment's notice and is able to fill in fairly well for Virginia Tech. I know that in that first half he was only 1 of 1, and I think he maybe got 3 yards on that pass play. But listen, that's tough. I asked Justin Fuente in the post-game presser, I said, how can you articulate for me how hard it is? And his exact words to me was, man, it sucks. It is so hard because you're preparing. You don't know if you're going to get in the game. And sometimes you just sit there and watch the whole game, and then you take off your gear and you get on the bus and you go home. He said, and sometimes stuff like this happens, and like that, you got to be ready to go. And Knox, I thought, did an admirable job in that situation.
We've seen him come into 2 pretty difficult situations. He was out there against Clemson last year, college football playoff game in late November, and he hasn't played a game all season. All of a sudden, you're like, Knox Kadum, you're in, buddy. And he went out there and he held his own, and I thought he played well. And the same can be said for today. I will never be questioning whether or not Knox Kadum is ready to play. He's always going to be ready to play. He's preparing well. The coaching staff continues to gush over him and how he's continues to prepare, and he's always ready to go. I'm not worried about that. I'm worried about more so like a talent drop off, and maybe that's unfair because we haven't seen a ton of him. But just on paper, when you consider the type of recruit that Virginia Tech normally has at the quarterback position, Knox Kadum doesn't necessarily fit the bill in that sense, right? So that's all I mean by that. And maybe a lot of that's not fair just because we haven't seen a lot of him, and maybe he's more capable than I believe that he is, or that I've seen so far, going off what I've seen. But he's always going to be ready to play, and he came in today, and it was no different. I was impressed with how he just stepped right in there and just like picked up the offense, and it was like Burmeister was never off the field, and that's what you want out of a backup. You want to be able to come in, still be able to operate the offense, even if it is in a more limited capacity.
The good news for people, I know that there are probably some Hokie fans out there that are wondering this. James Mitchell will be okay. Justin said that he's walking around. He's fine. He'll be ready to go next week. He doesn't think that there's any sort of lingering injury. And Trey Turner even said in the post game, he said, I went over to him. I said, just be smart. Like, we'll be okay. You don't need to be out there. Just let's get you ready for next week. So that's good news. So the Hokies will go into that West Virginia game in Morgantown, which is going to be their second real test of the season, and they should have a full complement of players. On the defensive side, Mike, the one thing that really jumped out to me was the fact that Nasir Peoples ends up with 11 tackles for the Hokies. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. And here's where I'm going with that. Mike knows exactly where I'm going with this. Nasir Peoples is in the secondary, right? Like, the last thing you want is a corner or a safety being your leading tackler, because that means one of two things. Either you're scheming with those guys and bringing them in, which might be okay, but more likely the opposing team is getting to that third level, and that's what you don't want. But Nasir played solid, 8 solo tackles, 3 assists. He did have the 1 pass breakup. I was really impressed once again, Mike, with the way the defense played. Yeah, they gave up that touchdown, but I mean, if you're holding teams to 7 and 10 points respectively, man, I'm cool with that. Like, let's roll with that. I can deal with that all season long.
Yeah, I hated the game plan today. Now, not to be overly critical, because I think it's a game where you want to try some different stuff, right? So Virginia Tech came out last week and played almost exclusively man defense against North Carolina's wide receiver group, which I think they needed to do, and they needed to win those one-on-one battles. They played a lot of zone defense last year. Now, I'm still not sure, because we're only in game 2 of the second year of Justin Hamilton. I'm not sure if they played zone defense last year more out of preference for Justin Hamilton, right? Because that's the defense he wants to play, or out of necessity because they were so COVID riddled in the secondary. So
that's it.
That's the question. That's the question I have. Now, with that being said, if you're going to try some things defensively, schematically, and kind of see how your guys react, this is a game to do it. Richmond is a game to do it, right? Like that's when you want to try these things. You don't want to try these things against North Carolina or West Virginia or Notre Dame, Miami, etc.
Right.
So on one hand, I didn't love the game plan. I didn't love that the defensive backs are playing 8 yards off the ball against a Middle Tennessee State receiver group that's not going to beat Virginia Tech's corners one-on-one consistently throughout the course of the entire football game. I wasn't crazy about that. That seemed a little bit conservative. On the flip side, I can also see why Hamilton maybe wanted to scheme up something different, show West Virginia something different on film, right? Yep. Give them something else to think about. Okay, they're not exclusively a man defense team like they showed against North Carolina. They like to play a little bit of zone too. They like to mix up looks. If you're going to put something different on film for West Virginia, I understand that, right? And I don't want to be overly critical of a defense. Again, Paul, Virginia Tech won this game. It was 35-7, and Middle Tennessee State scored a garbage time touchdown. Tech dominated the second half. It was a very good performance in the second half. So I don't want to be overly critical, but it was a little disappointing with the offensive start, and it was a little disappointing to see the defense playing 7 or 8 yards off the ball and watching Bailey Hawkman, who's not a very good quarterback, complete 5 and 6 yard passes with ease, because he is a Division I quarterback, even if he's not very good. So that was a little bit frustrating for me. But overall, bend but don't break, right? And only giving up 7 points, and played a little bit tighter in the second half. After they showed the zone looks, it seemed like they tightened up at least their splits with the corners. So it was much better. They gave up 7 points. Right? They were great last week. They gave up 10 last week. They were phenomenal. They've given up 17 points in 2 games. We can only complain so much, Paul.
Exactly. And I think you're right. I think you're 100% right about what you're showing West Virginia. Obviously West Virginia is going to go back. They're going to look at that tape against North Carolina. They'd be stupid not to. That they're going to look at that. But, it's one of those things that I think they're trying to just not show as much. And I think that showed in the first half, right? I feel like that's what Brad Cornelson was doing on the offensive side, too. They're like, let's not show West Virginia a whole lot. We can probably beat these guys with, our Green Bay Packer 7-play offense that we're going to run and just see if they can stop us. And then they were kind of like, maybe not. Maybe we have to show them a little bit more. And so we'll see what West Virginia has for them next week. It was
an ultra conservative game plan, right? And I don't blame Virginia Tech one bit for saying we don't want to put too much on film for West Virginia. On the other side, I'm like, y'all, you gotta execute. If you're gonna have you gotta execute. Right? That's fine. Certainly. Run what plays you want to run, and don't overexert yourself right ahead of the West Virginia game. Don't put too much on film. I get all that, but if you're going to have a simple game plan offensively and defensively, we're going to run between the tackles. We're going to play 7 or 8 yards off the ball and make Hawkman just throw until he makes a mistake, which he did. Then if you're going to go with that game plan, execute it better than you did in the first half. That's all I'm asking for. And I think Tech's in a good spot moving in next week. I think team's mostly healthy. As far as the Nasir Peoples thing, real quick, he had I think 8 or 9 tackles last week. So Tech's defense played a much better game in my opinion last week against a much better opponent. But I was okay with the linebacker play. I don't think it was necessarily like a cleanup thing. Right. It depends on how you look at it. I'll go back and do a rewatch of the game just to make sure. But I thought Peoples played a great game. He's been awesome through 2 games.
He really has. Yeah, he has. He's been solid. I've been happy with the whole defense. I really think that the way they're playing is great, especially compared to last year, right? Like, I mean, that's the thing. Like, I don't know. Maybe people don't realize or don't want to look back at 2020. I know I really don't. But when you look back at it, this is a defense in 2020 that gave up 448 yards per game and 33.8 points per game. They have given up what I don't do math, Mike. They've given up 10 points per game. No, less than that. They've given up 17 total. So they've given up like 8.5 points per game. So yeah, like these are huge strides. And I don't remember in 2020 what Sam Howell did against the Hokies, but 208 yards last week and this week. And I know that Bailey Hockman is not Sam Howell. He only throws for 207 and one touchdown. If you're going to tell me that for the rest of the season, Virginia Tech is going to give up between 7 and 17 points, and they're going to hold the opposing quarterback to 220 or less yards per game,
they will be in every single game that they play if the defense plays as well. There will not be a game in which – now, I'm not saying Virginia Tech's going to win every single game, but they will be in every single game.
They'll have a chance.
Even if they lose, they won't get blown out. They'll give themselves a shot.
There will be no 2019 Duke games.
Right. You're not going to have like weird 45-10 results or – last year against Pittsburgh where they gave up 40 plus points. You're not going to have those types of results. So yeah, the defense has been great. It's kept Tech in 2 games. It didn't win the game this week. I mean, it's Middle Tennessee.
They didn't have to though,
but didn't have to. Right.
It
didn't have to. And the offense needs to be better. And the offense is where the questions lie with this team right now. It's not the defense. I'm there with the defense. Like I'm there. Play man, and it was more just like, look, guys, I know you're better today, so just line up and play. Don't do this 10 yards off the ball thing. It's just annoying to watch on television. But I'm very happy with how the defense has performed for sure through 2 games.
All right, before we get out of here and tell everyone where they can find us, this just popped up, Mike, and I know that you are the man when it comes to the gambling advice. Vandy Dandy wants to know, Liberty a good pick at -3 at Troy?
You can pick against Malik Willis if you'd like to. I am not going to though. So yes, I think that is a good pick. I have not personally bet this game, but that would be a good pick. Yes.
Okay. All right. That's fair.
The road favorite.
I am Paul Van Wagner. I'm the host of The Drive on ESPN Blacksburg. You can listen to The Drive Monday through Friday from 4 until 6. We are on ESPN Blacksburg, obviously locally here in the New River Valley. If you are not anywhere near Blacksburg or the rest of the New River Valley, you can find us online at espnblacksburg.com. And we have an app, the ESPN Blacksburg app. Go to your Google Play Store or your iTunes Store. Just search for ESPN Blacksburg. You can download the app. It's free, and you can take us with you anywhere you want to go. He's Mike McDaniel, and I'm not even going to try to list all of the places you can find him. Mike, tell the people, where can they find you?
sonsofsaturday.com, Hokie Hangover Podcast if you're a Virginia Tech football fan, and then Basketball Conference Podcast if you're an ACC football fan. So I got ACC football content there as well, so go check that out.
And if you want to beef with him on Twitter, at Mike McDaniel SOS.
At Mike McDaniel SOS.
He loves when people come at him on Twitter. It's a lot of fun.
I do.
Mike, thanks, man. Next week, we'll have the Hokie House pregame show from 9 till 10. Mike will be joining us here. And as will, I believe, Dave Perks. Andrew, Alex, and I will be live at Hokie House, even though they won't be open until 10 o'clock. But that's okay. We get great service there, even when they're not open. So we enjoy that. Yeah, so we'll talk to you all next Saturday right here on the Voice of College Football for the Hokie House pregame show, and then Mike and I will be back here. I'll be at my house, he'll be at his, and we'll bring you a breakdown of the Virginia Tech football game. Hokies win once again 35-14 against Middle Tennessee State. Virginia Tech moves to 2-0 on the season. We'll see if they get a bump in the rankings. There was at least one ranked team that lost today. I'm not going to talk about it because Mark might kick us off the stream, but it didn't hurt my feelings at all. So
he needs to go back to rooting for his alma mater, Kent State.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Be a Kent State fan, Mark. Stop with this Ohio State stuff. It's not a good look for you. Mike McDaniel, take care of yourself, man. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Paul.